Richard Goodall's story did not begin under bright stage lights or in front of cheering crowds. It began quietly, inside the familiar hallways of middle school in Indiana, where he spent more than 2 decades working as a janitor. Every day, he showed up early, cleaned classrooms, waxed floors, and greeted students with a warm smile. To most people, his life looked ordinary. But hidden within those daily routines was a powerful voice and a deep love for music that had followed him since childhood. Richard often sang while he worked, humming classic rock songs as he moved through the cafeteria and hallways. Students and teachers noticed, but no one imagined that this simple habit would one day change his life forever. In 2022, one ordinary moment became extraordinary when a student recorded Richard singing "Don't Stop Believin'" inside the school. The video was shared online without much thought, but by the next morning, it had spread across TikTok and other social media platforms. People were instantly drawn to the raw emotion in his voice and the unexpected setting. He wasn't on a stage. He wasn't dressed like a performer. He was just a man singing, because it made him feel alive. As the video gained millions of views, news outlets replayed it, and comments poured in from people who felt inspired by his story. Yet through all this attention, Richard's life stayed the same. He returned to work, put on his uniform, and continued doing the job he had done for years. Fame felt distant and unfamiliar, almost unreal. When America's Got Talent reached out to him, the idea of stepping onto a national stage felt overwhelming. Richard had never flown on a plane before and had never imagined performing in front of millions. Still, with encouragement from his community, he decided to take a leap of faith. In May 2024, he boarded a plane to Los Angeles for the first time in his life. He carried with him nervous energy, a lifetime of quiet hope, and the support of people who believed in him long before the world knew his name. When he walked onto the America's Got Talent stage, his nerves were visible. But the moment the music began, something changed. His voice filled the room, steady and emotional, as if he'd been waiting his entire life for that exact moment. The judges leaned forward, the audience stood, and when Heidi Klum pressed a golden buzzer, confetti fell as Richard stood frozen in disbelief. That single moment turned a school janitor into a national sensation. But while the world celebrated what looked like an overnight success, very few people understood the long road of disappointment, loss, and quiet perseverance that led him there. His journey was not just about talent. It was about resilience, humility, and the power of staying true to who you are, even when no one is watching. For most contestants, America's Got Talent is a result of years of preparation, training, and chasing the spotlight. For Richard Goodall, it was something completely different. He didn't arrive with a carefully planned career strategy or a history of professional performances. Instead, he stepped onto the stage carrying real-life experiences, quiet struggles, and a voice shaped by years of singing for himself rather than an audience. As the competition progressed, Richard treated every performance as a gift rather than a guarantee. In the quarterfinals, he performed "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You?", dedicating the song to his fiancée, Angie. The emotion in his voice felt deeply personal, and many viewers could hear pain, love, and gratitude in every note. It wasn't about perfect technique. It was about honesty. When he returned for the semifinals with "Eye of the Tiger," he surprised audiences by showing strength and confidence that many didn't expect. This performance proved he was more than just a viral moment. He had range, presence, and the ability to grow under pressure. By the time he reached the finals, Richard understood that he was no longer just representing himself. He was representing his community, his past, and everyone who had ever felt overlooked. In the finale, he returned to Journey, the band that unknowingly played a role in changing his life. As he sang, it felt like a full-circle moment, connecting the school hallway performance that started it all with the biggest stage of his life. When Richard Goodall was announced as the winner of Season 19, the moment felt surreal. Confetti fell, the crowd erupted, and the judges applauded a victory that few predicted. This was not just a talent show win. It was validation for a man who had spent years singing without recognition. But behind the celebration was a deeper story. His performances carried a weight that came from years of rejection, loss, and personal hardship. While viewers saw confidence and joy, there were unseen wounds behind the voice. Long before AGT, Richard had faced disappointment, when he auditioned for The Voice and received no response. He quietly returned to his everyday life, shelving his dreams without bitterness. Music remained part of him, but the idea of success felt distant. The pandemic later took away his gospel band, another source of comfort and purpose. Then came the greatest loss of all. In 2021, Richard lost his first wife, Patricia Sue, to kidney cancer. She had been his strongest supporter, encouraging him even when he doubted himself. Her passing left a deep emptiness that changed everything. Grief reshaped his daily life and added layers of emotion to his singing. When he performed on AGT, audiences didn't just hear a strong voice. They heard years of pain, love, and survival woven into every note. This emotional depth is what made his journey resonate so strongly with viewers around the world. Although Richard Goodall's rise on America's Got Talent looked sudden to the public, his life had already been shaped by years of quiet struggle long before he ever stepped onto that stage. Music had always been part of who he was, but success never came easily. Years earlier, Richard had auditioned for The Voice, hoping that someone in the industry might finally see his potential. Instead, he was met with silence. There was no call back, no explanation, and no encouragement, like many artists before him. He returned home without making a fuss, choosing to move forward rather than dwell on disappointment. He continued working as a janitor, continued singing for himself, and continued believing that maybe his voice still mattered in some small way. For a time, he found comfort performing with a small gospel band. Singing with others gave him a sense of belonging and purpose. The band played local events and traveled modestly, allowing Richard to express himself without pressure. But when the pandemic arrived, everything stopped. Venues closed, gatherings were canceled, and the band slowly fell apart. Once again, Richard faced the loss of something that had given his life meaning. Then came the most painful chapter of all. In 2021, Richard lost his first wife, Patricia Sue, after a battle with kidney cancer. She had been his partner for many years, standing by his side through every high and low. Patricia believed in his talent, even when he didn't believe in himself. Her death left a deep emptiness that could not be filled easily. The home they shared felt different. The routines they built together disappeared, and everyday life became heavier. Richard continued going to work because responsibility gave him structure, but inside, he was learning how to live in a world that no longer felt familiar. Grief does not simply fade away, and for Richard, it settled quietly into his voice. When he sang, the pain was there, even if he never spoke about it openly. Viewers who later watched him on America's Got Talent could hear something deeper in his performances. It wasn't just talent, it was life experience. Even after the show, the pressure of sudden fame took its toll on his health. In 2024, Richard underwent hernia surgery, a procedure he kept private for some time. The recovery forced him to slow down after months of nonstop travel, interviews, and rehearsals. While resting, he had time to reflect on how quickly his life had changed and how much he had been carrying emotionally. But life slowly began to feel lighter again. In 2022, Richard met Angie, the woman who would later become his wife. Angie entered his life before the fame, before the spotlight, and before the national attention. She didn't see him as a viral star. She saw a man who had been through loss, disappointment, and self-doubt. Over time, she became his anchor, supporting him during the intense moments of the competition and reminding him that he deserved happiness. Angie encouraged Richard to look into his past, especially a part of his life he had never fully explored. He had grown up without knowing his biological father and had made peace with that absence. But with Angie's encouragement, he decided to search for answers. What he discovered surprised him deeply. His biological father was alive, a retired K-9 police officer and Army veteran, living a life completely separate from his own. Richard also discovered siblings he had never met. The reunion was emotional and meaningful, offering him a sense of belonging he didn't know he was missing. This discovery didn't erase his past pain, but it added something new to his future. It helped him understand himself more fully and strengthened the emotional foundation that carried him through the next chapter of his life. After Richard Goodall was crowned the winner of America's Got Talent, the world expected his life to change overnight. Viewers assumed he would leave his old job behind, sign big contracts, and step fully into music industry. Reporters waited for announcements about record deals and tours. Fans imagined him moving to a big city and starting a brand new life. This is how these stories usually go. But Richard's next move surprised almost everyone. Instead of walking away from his old life, he returned to it. Just days after the finale, Richard went back to work as a janitor at West Vigo Middle School, the same place where his viral moment first happened. He put on the same work clothes, picked up the same cleaning tools, and greeted the same students and staff. To many people watching from the outside, this decision was confusing. Some wondered if he was afraid of success. Others thought he didn't understand the opportunity he had just won. But the truth was much simpler. Richard never entered America's Got Talent expecting to win. For him, the show was never about fame or money. It was about sharing his voice and expressing something deeply personal. When interviewers asked why he returned to work, Richard explained calmly that he liked his job. He liked the kids, the routine, and the sense of purpose it gave him. The school had been a constant in his life through good times and bad. Returning there helped him stay grounded, while everything else around him felt new and overwhelming. He also understood that the entertainment world moves quickly and unpredictably. Instead of rushing into decisions, Richard wanted to take things one step at a time. This steady approach reflected the kind of person he had always been. His choice earned even more respect from his community. Students cheered when he returned. Teachers and staff welcomed him back with pride. The school held a pep rally in his honor, celebrating not just his win, but the way he represented them on a national stage. The city honored him with a key to the city, recognizing how deeply his story had touched people. Even as public appearances increased, Richard continued to post photos of himself doing everyday tasks at work. These images showed that fame had not changed him. He didn't see his job as something to escape. He saw it as part of who he was. At the same time, return to work did not mean turning away from music. Invitations began to come in. He performed at an Indiana Pacers game, filling the arena with his voice. He sang at community events like the Circle of Lights and the Riverside Festival of Lights. He even opened a show for Howie Mandel, standing alongside people he once watched from home. Each appearance felt like a new experience rather than a replacement for his old life. Richard found a balance between public recognition and private routine. While many winners chase fame immediately, he allowed his music career to grow slowly and naturally. This approach gave him time to understand what he truly wanted. He didn't want a life that felt forced or rushed. He wanted something real and lasting. By choosing to return to his janitor job, Richard sent a powerful message. Success does not have to erase where you came from. It can grow alongside it. His decision showed that staying true to yourself can be more important than chasing expectations. For fans, this choice made his story even more meaningful. It proved that his humility was not an act for the cameras. It was genuine. And while the world waited to see what he would do next, Richard was quietly building a future on his own terms, one that honored both his past and his dreams. While many people expected Richard Goodall to rush into the music industry after winning America's Got Talent, he chose a very different path. Instead of signing the first deal offered or chasing fast success, Richard decided to move carefully. He understood that the entertainment world can be loud and demanding, and he didn't want to lose himself in the process. For years, music had been something personal, something that helped him survive difficult times. He wanted to protect that connection. Richard believed that his voice had already proven itself on the show. He didn't need to convince anyone anymore. What he needed was time to grow as an artist and learn who he was outside of competition television. This mindset shaped every decision he made in the months that followed. His first major step came with the release of his debut single, Long Time Coming. The song was officially released on August 29th, 2025, and for Richard, it marked a new beginning. He announced the release through a simple and heartfelt message on social media, speaking directly to the people who had supported him from the beginning. He described his journey as overwhelming and expressed gratitude for every moment that led him there. Recording the song took him to Nashville, a city known for its deep musical roots. For Richard, being in Nashville was both exciting and intimidating. It was the first time he stepped into a professional studio environment without the structure of a television show guiding him. The experience allowed him to explore his sound and understand what kind of artist he wanted to become. Instead of copying trends, he focused on sincerity. The song reflected patience, perseverance, and gratitude, themes that mirrored his own life. To build confidence and stay connected to his roots, Richard continued performing in smaller settings. He joined a local group called Sugar Street, performing alongside musicians who shared his love for music rather than fame. These shows gave him space to experiment and learn without the pressure of national attention. Singing in front of smaller crowds reminded him why he fell in love with music in the first place. It wasn't about applause. It was about connection. As opportunities grew, Richard began working with managers who helped him understand the business side of music. Even then, nothing felt rushed. Every decision was made with care. His focus remained on building something stable and long-lasting rather than chasing quick success. At the same time, new doors continued to open. Publishers expressed interest in turning his life story into a book, drawn to its themes of perseverance, loss, and hope. While no deal was finalized, the conversations showed how deeply his journey resonated with people. His wife, Angie, even joked about the idea of a future movie. When asked who should play him, Richard laughed and mentioned Zac Efron, showing how comfortable he had become with attention. Despite these new possibilities, Richard stayed connected to America's Got Talent. During the show's 20th anniversary special, he returned to the stage to perform Eye of the Tiger, opening the night alongside former contestants. Watching his original audition again was an emotional experience. The video reminded him how far he had come in such a short time. That moment wasn't just about fame. It was about growth. It showed him that music was no longer just something he did quietly in school hallways. It was becoming the center of his future. Still, he moved forward without pressure, allowing a career to unfold naturally. For Richard, success wasn't measured by speed. It was measured by meaning. As Richard Goodall's life continued to change after America's Got Talent. People began forming their own ideas about what his future would look like. Some believed his time in the spotlight would be brief, a beautiful moment he would remember while returning fully to his old routine. Others thought he might struggle to find a place in an industry that moves quickly and often leaves people behind. For months, Richard said very little about long-term plans, choosing instead to focus on the present. This silence only made fans more curious. They wanted to know if music was truly his future, or if it was simply a chapter that had passed. The answer came in a simple and honest way, not through a dramatic announcement, but through his actions and quiet words. Richard confirmed what many had hoped but were unsure about. Music was not something he planned to leave behind. It was a path he intended to follow. When he explained this, he didn't speak like someone chasing fame. He spoke like someone finally accepting who he had always been. Singing was not a hobby for him. It was part of his identity. For years, he had sung in empty hallways, at small events, and for himself. America's Got Talent didn't create his passion. It simply gave him a larger stage. This confirmation changed the way people saw his story. He wasn't a one-time winner or a lucky viral moment. He was a man stepping fully into a dream he had carried quietly for most of his life. One of the clearest signs of this shift came in November 2025 at the Vigo County YMCA Inspiration Gala. The event was held in the same community that had supported him long before television cameras arrived. That night, Richard took the stage as the headlining performer. He performed his single A Long Time Coming, giving the audience a first look at the direction his music was heading. The song reflected patience, gratitude, and perseverance. He followed it with Don't Stop Believin', the song that changed his life. The crowd sang along, many with tears in their eyes. Teachers, families, and neighbors stood together, celebrating not just a singer, but someone they felt personally connected to. The event raised money for children's programs and scholarships, making the night about more than entertainment. It reflected the values Richard held close. As his commitment to music grew, Richard also began thinking practically about his future. His job at West Vigo Middle School had been a major part of his identity, but balancing full-time work with performances and travel became increasingly difficult. Slowly, he began discussing the idea of retirement. It wasn't an easy decision. The school represented stability, routine, and years of memories. But moving forward didn't feel like abandoning the past. It felt like growth. Richard also spoke openly about building a future with his wife, Angie, together. They began exploring the idea of moving to Florida, a place that offered warmth, a slower pace, and room to breathe. He shared that he wasn't looking for luxury or excess. He wanted a simple home where he could write music, rest, and enjoy life. As new opportunities appeared, Richard stayed grounded. He talked about wanting to collaborate with Simon Cowell and explored ideas for a full album. Conversations about live tours and partnerships slowly took shape, each one aligning with the honest image people loved. Throughout everything, he remained connected to fans, sharing updates from recording sessions and everyday moments. The confirmation was clear. Richard Goodall was no longer waiting for permission to pursue music. He had chosen his path, not out of pressure, but out of understanding. This wasn't a sudden change. It was a natural continuation of a life shaped by perseverance, loss, and hope. Richard Goodall's story is not just about winning America's Got Talent. It is about what happens when a person spends years believing their dream is too small or too late, only to discover that it was waiting patiently all along. For most of his life, Richard lived quietly, working hard, caring for others, and keeping his passion for music in the background. He never stopped singing, but he also never believed the world would hear him. The stage was something meant for other people, younger people, or those with louder confidence. Yet life has a way of surprising those who remain honest with themselves. When Richard stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, he didn't arrive as a polished star. He arrived as a man carrying years of unseen effort, loss, and resilience. That honesty is what made people listen. His voice wasn't just strong. It was real. It carried stories that didn't need explaining. After the show, the world expected instant transformation. Big stages, fast fame, and constant attention often follow success on television. But Richard chose something different. He moved forward with care, protecting the part of himself that music came from. He didn't allow the noise of expectations to change his values. Instead, he built his future slowly, making sure every step felt right. This approach made his journey even more powerful. It showed that success does not always mean speed. Sometimes it means staying true to yourself when things finally start moving. As fans watch him release music, perform in meaningful places, and speak honestly about his plans, one thing became clear. Richard wasn't chasing applause anymore. He was building a life that reflected who he truly was. His decision to step away from a long career in education was not an escape. It was a transition. Teaching had shaped him, giving him patience, empathy, and purpose. Those same qualities now shaped his music. When he sang, people didn't just hear a performer. They heard a teacher who understood struggle, encouragement, and growth. This connection is what made his story last beyond the show. Music gave Richard a new way to serve others. His performances became moments of shared emotion, reminding people that it is never too late to follow a calling. Whether he was singing at a local fundraiser or planning future collaborations, his focus remained on meaning rather than numbers. He measured success by impact, not charts, by smiles, not headlines. His relationship with fans reflected this mindset. He stayed approachable, grateful, and honest, never placing himself above the people who supported him. As he looked toward the future, Richard carried no illusions of perfection. He knew the road ahead would include challenges, criticism, and uncertainty. But he also knew he had something many people search for their entire lives. He had clarity. Music was not a phase or a reward. It was a responsibility he accepted with humility. His voice became a reminder that dreams do not expire, and that quiet persistence can be just as powerful as loud ambition. In confirming what fans had long suspected, Richard didn't just announce a career choice. He revealed a truth about himself. He was always meant to sing. The world simply heard him later than expected. And in that delay, his story gained depth, honesty, and meaning. Richard Goodall's journey continues, not as a headline, but as a living example that purpose finds us when we are ready to listen. Even though Richard Goodall has already achieved what many people only dream of, his story feels far from finished. In many ways, it feels like it is just beginning. The reason his journey continues to matter is because it speaks to something universal. People see themselves in him. They see years of waiting, quiet effort and unspoken dreams. Richard represents the idea that success does not belong only to the young or the loud, but also to those who remain patient and true to themselves. As he steps into this next chapter, expectations will naturally follow. Fans wonder whether he will release a full album, go on tour, or collaborate with well-known artists. While these possibilities are exciting, Richard has made it clear that his priority is balance. He wants to grow without losing peace. He wants music to add to his life, not take it over. This mindset is rare in an industry driven by speed and constant visibility. It is also what makes people trust him. When Richard talks about future projects, he speaks carefully and honestly. He does not promise more than he can give. He has mentioned working on new songs that reflect real life, not fantasy. These songs are expected to focus on perseverance, gratitude, and hope, themes that have followed him from the very beginning. Fans do not expect flashy performances or complicated visuals. They expect sincerity. That is his strength. As live performance events, benefit concerts, and intimate shows align more with his values than massive arenas. These settings allow him to connect directly with people, to look them in the eye, and to share moments that feel personal. This approach may not always bring the biggest headlines, but it builds something more lasting. Trust, loyalty, respect. Another important part of Richard's future is his role as an example. Without trying to be a motivational speaker, he has become one. Teachers, parents, and older dreamers often mention how his story changed their perspective. Many people believe they have missed their chance at something they love. Richard quietly proves that this belief is not